Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. World Water Day is a marquee event for ERA, and it is celebrated globally by the United Nations. Each year, a theme is chosen to highlight various aspects of water-related issues, and we take this opportunity to share our thoughts and experiences with our audience. My name is Swapnil Poddar, and I'm from ERA Sustainable Water Solutions. I'm your host for today. Every year, the UN addresses a posing challenge, and this year's theme is Water for Peace. This year is special for us. Our webinar is happening in a hybrid mode as we are thrilled to collaborate with NICMAR University as a part of our industry academia partnership. This means we have both the academic audience joining in person, and we had a very overwhelming response. A live audience is tuning in from over 7 countries this year. NICMAR has a rich legacy of creating over 40,000 construction management professionals for over 40 years who are leading global projects now. Through our partnership with NICMAR at ERA, we aim to nurture future water sustainability champions. So agenda is broken down into 5 brief points. First being what is a natural resource and what categories they fall into. Next, how natural resources, they from abundant, they go to a critical or to a conflicted resource, and how that is linked to peace. Next is water as a natural resource and the challenges associated with water and what value water carries. Based on the challenges, we will discuss a few solutions with regards to water. We have made frameworks which will help you understand the concept in depth. And lastly, way forward. What do we go home with? So to set the context, World Water Day was conceptualized by United Nations in the year 1993, and 22nd March is the day designated for it. It is to raise awareness and to drive action on a global scale and collectively mitigate water crisis across various countries. Last year we covered a topic where the theme was accelerating the change. This year the theme is water for peace. The reason being the water that we have on earth is an absolute constant. It doesn't increase or decrease. However, factors like scarcity, inaccessibility, quality of fresh water, that have led to a lot of not just crisis but also conflicts among neighboring nations, among neighboring states, which is why water is at the core or is at the epicenter of peace. And the brighter side is that United Nations have laid down a very systematic framework with the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and of which we are going to address SDG number 6, which is for clean, which deals with water primarily, and it has sub goals where it deals with access to clean water, water for sanitation, the health of water for human well-being, and so on. Now, starting our topic, what is a natural resource? No awards for guessing this one. The most abundant natural resource is water, and at the same time the most abundantly consumed natural resource on earth is water. We live our life off of natural resources. Some of them use them as they occur in the natural form, like water. We don't have to process it as much, whereas most of the others, say about 80% of those natural resources, they have to be processed or synthesized for them to be consumed in our day-to-day lives based on various factors such as how a natural resource occurs in the nature, how it is processed, how it is used. We have categorized them on different parameters, and based on the consumption, they derive a certain value. So the first one is abundant. So natural resource which is available in plenty, there are multiple users, but if some other user is consuming a natural resource, there is not much of a tension. If somebody, say for example, one of the most abundant natural resources is sunlight. So if you are consuming sunlight, nobody is going to come and knock at your door. Why are you using my sunlight? So it is an abundant resource, and there is no dispute in consuming or using sunlight as a natural resource. Next, it is where the resource starts to get limited, as in the resource availability is such and the consumption is such that they don't go hand in hand, which is why there is more demand for it, the consumption is more, the availability is less. In that case, the resource starts to get limited. So this resource can be borrowed from someone or purchased from some other geography. It could be sand or any particular metal, say aluminum. Next, as the demand grows, as the consumption keeps on increasing, and availability in a certain area or a geography reduces, it moves to a scarce resource. So today the example is freshwater. Freshwater is a scarce resource which is accepted globally. As we move on to the next progression of a natural resource, there are certain elements which occur very rarely in the Earth system. So these are called as rare earth elements, REEs. So they come under critical category. So if a certain nation possesses it, there is a very less likelihood they would easily share it with others, because that is a point of advantage for them. And the last progression, where there is a very stiff competition for a natural resource. Countries contest for it, or there is, you might have heard of global instabilities because of a natural resource. This is where a natural resource turns into a conflicted resource. An example of that is oil. There have been many wars or proxy wars because of oil as a natural resource. And in this case, the fighting nations, they are willing to annex the other territory where oil is available as a natural resource. So this is a progression from abundant to conflicted natural resource. Now, what does it mean in our lives? So as long as the resource is abundant, as I said, sunlight as an example, nobody is going to come and fight with you. Why are you using my sunlight? In that case, there is pretty much peaceful a situation. If we use as much sunlight as we can, our neighbors or our neighboring country or our neighboring state, they are not going to get hampered by it. So it is a fairly peaceful situation. As the resource becomes limited, this is where competition starts to happen. So people want to have, or an entity would want to have more of what the others would have. Now this is the point where things start to change. The moment a resource gets scarce, this is where tensions start to rise, and that might escalate into a dispute. So this is a progression in terms of how a situation moves from a peaceful one to a disrupted one. As it becomes critical, this is where nations are willing to engage in talks, or more than just talks. There have been proxy wars that happen over natural resources. So this is the next progression. And the last one, where a resource is highly conflicted, there are interstate conflicts, or there are civil wars, there are international instabilities that we have observed. So this is the last progression, which is a war. So linking a natural resource from abundant to a conflicted one, likewise the situation moves from peaceful to a war-like situation. Now let us use this framework to illustrate water's role as a natural resource. So as I said, water is the most abundant natural resource, and it is also consumed the highest on earth. So if we put water in this framework, but on a global scale, so water is abundantly available in Canada. It is noted that the per capita availability of fresh water is one of the highest in Canada. They don't have disputes over as much disputes for availability of fresh water. Next, we move to a limited resource. So a country like Denmark, who is heavily dependent on groundwater, they have limited per capita, they have regulated the per capita consumption, but they are rationing the water very well as a limited resource. So Denmark comes under, water in Denmark comes under as a limited resource. Scarce. India is for India, water is a scarce resource. And to put that in perspective with number, India is home to 18% of the global population. So likewise, we should have more water of the that is available in the on the planet, but we have only 4%, meager 4% of the natural fresh water that we can consume. So naturally, there is a disparity, as in the population is high and the availability is low. This is where water becomes a scarce resource. Critical. So African countries, they being in the equatorial zone or the tropical zone, their water is a very critical resource for them. And last, conflict. So conflict doesn't happen with a single entity. For conflict, two or more stakeholders are required. So this is where water is a conflicted resource between India and Pakistan, or India and China. So this is just one illustration. As the resource moves from abundant to conflicted, as it dwindles down, this is where the escalation starts to happen. Now let's look water from within the country. And within India, these are some of the examples. So Assam or the northeast states, they are fairly abundant with water with respect to the entire topography or demography of India. Goa as a union territory, they have limited freshwater resources, even though they are located at a shore. The availability of fresh water is very limited. Maharashtra as a state is scarce in terms of water resource because of the spread, because of the population, because of the industrial activity. We have much more demand than what we have. Punjab has apparently 5 rivers. The name comes from 5 rivers. But Punjab and Haryana, their water has become a critical resource. Water is heavily consumed for agriculture. Punjab being a granary, the demand is so high that water is not able to suffice second, third crop. So water has become a critical resource. And last, conflicted. As I said, there are two or more entities involved. In that case, Maharashtra and Karnataka, there is a conflict over the Kaveri water. So this is where water becomes a conflict resource within the country. To put that in perspective, this is India's river map. Now I'll give you a live situation. If you see Kashmir, there are major Indian rivers, the key Indian rivers, they originate from the Himalayan ranges. The ones marked yellow, they flow to Pakistan. The one marked red, we have recently completed making a barrage on Ravi River. So we have curbed the supply of water to Pakistan, but it was a part of the treaty which was agreed upon. But that has caused a lot of stress in Pakistan. The agricultural output for Pakistan has dropped down drastically. Likewise, on the right, if you see Blue River, Sangpo, which is Brahmaputra, it is called as Sangpo in Tibet. China annexed Tibet overnight and they are controlling Brahmaputra river and they have already made a lot of infrastructure projects on the river, creating interventions for the water to flow in the country. So if tomorrow China or Pakistan, they catch hold of our neck, that is just above Kashmir, imagine without them having to fire, even let alone fire, even if they point a bullet at us, they will bring us down on our knees. Because water holds that kind of value to our country. It is not only national security, it is also peace within the country. So in terms of water, there are challenges again. Again, water is a resource, there are multiple challenges. But in our present or in our today's session, we'll look at more broader problems which are easy to understand. So some of the key challenges are scarcity. That is, water is available in a certain area, there is more water available in a certain area, there is very less, there is disparity, which creates a certain scarcity. For example, there have been cases where water has been transported through railways to cities or places in Maharashtra, in our very own state, because of the scarcity there. Next is pollution of water. So the health of water is an issue. Even if there is water available, the quality of water is not as good. It is not healthy to be consumed or used. Next is inaccessibility. Water is available, but it is far off. It is in somebody else's borders, or it is regulated by a private entity. So accessibility of water is a challenge. Next is wastage. That is to do with our own mindset. So we as humans, we are, say for example, any other natural resource. If we talk about a critical resource as oil, it is not consumed by everyone. The user is not everyone. But water is one such resource where everyone is a user. Each and every person is a user. So it is to do with our mindset that we as a user tend to waste a lot of water. So these are broad challenges on a national and a global scale. So water holds a tremendous value for everyone, but the value, what value it carries, it varies from user to user. So in the photo that you see, probably for them, water has existential value. If there is no water, the person might not exist. For them, water has an existential value. Likewise, a nation, India as a nation, we are still an agrarian economy. For us, water carries economic value on a national scale. For someone, it carries social value. Like water flowing from India to Pakistan as a part of Indus Water Treaty, it is a means of cooperation that we will let so and so water into your country, you can utilize it, we won't stop it. So water has social value in terms of where it is a situation of conflict. Likewise, it has health value, ecological value. The photo that you see, I have purposely put earth there. Water has a scientific value also. To put it in perspective, now we have moon mission, we have Mars mission. One of the key objectives of all these space missions is to find water on moon or on these planets. The reason being, if we strike water on these planets, subterranean water, that water can be converted into a fuel, hydrogen. So these planets could act as a pit stop for our engines where we can go on to the next one. Right now we have a limited resource. Fuel can only take us as far. So for a manned mission, we need to have water as a fuel also for our existence. So water carries scientific value. This is where the amount of money spent on water is very high, where water has a scientific value. So considering these challenges, there is a silver lining to all these challenges. So here is another framework that we have made out of our experience. So every challenge comes with a solution. And the first and foremost is a technological solution. So broadly, technological solution means how do you source water? How do you distribute water? There are new technologies where water is distributed with some kind of automation. or water is sourced with some sort of technology. Next is, say, we increase conservation. We create some interventions or we create certain infrastructure for conserving water. We set in some instruments which can monitor the consumption. So this is a part of technological solutions that we have existing in the market, and these are not new. These have been there for a very long time. The next aspect is a diplomatic solution. So this is not applicable everywhere. So as a part of diplomacy, countries or United Nations, they have set up sustainable development goals. Those are accepted by different countries as a part of their framework in how they operate the governments. So they create policies, they create compliances, they create certain regulations like BRSR, where you are accountable for the water that you use. Next type of solution is sensitization. We do not call it awareness. Sensitization is you sensitize someone with respect to that natural resource. So in that there is capacity building, there is creating awareness among masses. Such kind of study is included in the educational curriculum. So your institute, NICMAR, is a pioneer institute who has included School of Energy and Environment as a full-fledged curriculum. So this is way ahead of time, but this is needed right now. So this is sensitizing people, where people choose this as a career. Next is the financial solutions. These happen at a different level. These happen at inter-country level or a national level, or where countries come together as alliances. This is where financial instruments, they start to work as solutions. So incentivizing a certain country for reducing their water footprint, or that country could export their product at a higher or a premium rate to some other country. So India can export, for instance, can export products at a higher price to Europe because our water footprint is very low. So this is a financial kind of a solution, but for that, the authority is much higher. It is very difficult for an individual or an entity to take up these kind of solutions. And last is community solution. This is highly underrated, highly ignored. Because user, as I said, for water, it is a resource that everyone is a user. So the entire user community has control of how we can manage water. Just to give you a very simple example, if I have to drink water out of a glass, if the glass is full, by the end of this session, I have only had half of the glass. The rest of it will be thrown away. That's the kind of mindset that we have, that we cannot utilize that water again. But if we keep that water in a bottle, even if the water is half full, we retain that water, we use it. Imagine this being done at a much larger scale. If we have, say, 1,000 attendees today, and if 1,000 people are saving just 100 ml of water, that is the kind of effect it creates. And this is where compounding starts to happen. So community, which is highly underrated, we as a user, we are in control of how we manage our own water. And the ones that you see highlighted in yellow, we at ERA, we have been able to address pretty much these in our own capacity. But again, water is such a vast subject. It is not a person's job, or it is not a single entity's job. All of these have to come together, align in a certain direction towards a singular goal. And before you even jump into solutions, these are solutions which are available in the market, or they are there. But first of all, we as a user, we need to develop a solution mindset. It is very common, or it is very often heard from people, that government doesn't do this. It is government's responsibility to provide us clean water. It is because of the government there was a spread of diarrhea. It is because of government the water health is very poor. It is very easy to do that. But for us, if you and me, if we are not a part of the solution, then we are a part of the problem. Or I would not even mind saying, in terms of water, we are a problem. So firstly, we have to get out of that mindset and be a part of the solution. Water could be abundant for someone and scarce for the other. But in this case, we have to give back, because you as a user, your effort towards water might not be for you alone. It could possibly avoid a war. Remember the progression: peace, competition, dispute, proxy war, and a war. Your mindset could potentially avoid a war. And while we exist, while ERA exists, we will ensure that the war does not happen. So let's see how solutions are implemented with this kind of a mindset and the resources that we have. So this is one solution. So it's good to understand this topic at the face of it, but it is also important that the implementations happen on ground of the 5 different solutions that we looked at. So one of this was a challenge that we took up. This was in a water scarce zone, and this area was on a hilltop where the rainfall was very scanty. Not having water was affecting an industrial facility in terms of their revenue output. So water carried a very crucial economic value in their system. So we understood that this area was water scarce. The rainfall is very scarce. So we conducted 3 different studies: aerial survey, topographical survey, and a hydrogeological survey. We understood the climatic impact of that area. We studied the watershed in that area, and we thought that we could get water in this area. And this is where the work started. So whatever natural water, rainfall is the only source here. So the natural rainfall that was incident on this property, we channelized it, and in certain areas we created interventions where the water was not allowed to run off the hilltop. It was allowed to recharge at different zones. Then the overflow would go to a place like this where we had created a sunk. The water was collected here. The strata was retained like a natural one. There is no concreting, no plastic lining. Once water started coming in, the location or the geography was just accepting water for years. But it was after some time it started to get it saturated and it started to retain water. We also introduced automation as a technology in it, where if you see, the water quality started to get enhanced and birds started coming in. So this is a natural or a live testimony, because birds, they don't come to swimming pools. Pigeons come. Migratory birds don't come. So this is where a place where water did not exist on a hilltop, we could create a water body which retains water naturally around the year. Even in this month, in this peak month, summer month of March, there is water held in that water body. And you'll be surprised to see the quality of water. It's clear blue water. And with this, there is a certain amount of economic value that has been restored in that industrial facility. At the same time, flooding was mitigated downstream. So there were multiple benefits out of this project. So this was a part of technological solution which was implemented on ground. Another one. So this was another facility where it's in a drought zone. The rainfall there varies between 200 to 240 mm in a year. So water as a resource in itself is scarce. They get water only once in a week or once every fortnight. And as a part of compliance, remember compliance? Diplomatic solutions. So they are regulated to have landscaping or maintain vegetation within that facility, but they did not have enough water to maintain that kind of vegetation. So again, this project, it had a time cycle of probably 2017, around 5 to 6 years, where we started to conserve water. We did not let out a single drop of water. Excess was reused within the facility. And earlier, which was a scrapyard, the water levels there started to increase gradually. And once the ground started to retain water, this is where we planted a micro forest. And plants, they survive not only on rains, they survive on soil moisture. So soil moisture is accessible to the plants only when the water levels in the ground increase or the ground is saturated with water. So here water carries an ecological value. The ambient temperature started to reduce. Earlier, which was a pretty much a barren land, is now a micro forest like this. And last is sensitization, which we said. We try and sensitize people about the natural resource, that it should really pinch us. It should not just make us aware, it should pinch us what is to be done, what action is to be taken. So we follow this framework: awareness, intent, and action. We try to drive awareness. So today is one such effort. We are trying to drive awareness on a much larger scale, make aware of what the challenges are and how it can be dealt with. That somewhere drives an intent within you. And you could be in any of the setups. You could be in the diplomatic setup. You could be in a technological setup. You could be in a financial institution. Somewhere or the other, you try and take an action in your own way. It could be as simple as reusing paper. One sheet of paper takes 40 liters of water. So not throwing away paper, that reduces the water footprint. So this is how action is driven. In this journey, I was lucky to meet the Waterman of India. He gave a very good message to me that if you respect 3 things, water, river, and women, your water is secured or your water crisis will be averted. So the way forward of whatever we have learned in all these years, the experience that we have, when you bring back water, water has such a beautiful aspect or a value to it. It is not only getting back water, it also restores ecology. it reduces, it sequestrates carbon. It it maintains the ecological balance. Life starts to come back. Like we saw birds coming back. If it is done on a much larger scale, our entire wildlife comes back to that very geography once there is water. So water carries ecological value. But not having water, what you have seen, it disrupts peace and it also leads to a much extreme case. But the counter effects of bringing back water, they are multifold. So water as a resource, just to summarize, from abundant, today we have it as a scarce resource in our today's context. But the time is not far when it dwindles down to be a conflicted resource. And mind you, today I told you conflicts about India, Pakistan, Maharashtra, Karnataka. Tomorrow it could be you and me. It needs only two entities for conflict. And water is such, it can push you against the wall. So it is our responsibility to bring it back to an abundant resource. So we at ERA, we have been trying to swim against the tide. We are trying to make water more abundant from a scarce critical resource, and that naturally restores peace. So this is why water is the denominator of a lot of things. So to summarize, this is just a short illustration of how collectively we can do it. As I said, it is not an individual's job or it is not a single entity's job who can solve the problem. To bring peace, we have to bring water as a critical or a scarce resource to an abundant resource. And everyone from different institutions have to come together to a singular focused plan where we make water abundant. Automatically there will be peace. Automatically, if we have enough water within our country, even if there is a attack on our borders, we are self-sufficient in terms of water. We would not have to budge to other countries' demands. So this is just a summarized infographic for you to take home, that together we have to align in a singular direction to make water abundant, which will ensure peace. And I want to re-emphasize this point. We had introduced a concept called as Water Action Tour last year, where we take industry, academia, students, communities to a source where you get water, how water is consumed, how water is treated, how it is led back into the ecosystem. So this generates a lot of not just awareness, but it also pushes you to take a certain action. And I'm glad to share that in the past 12 years, we have been able to take a decent amount of action. We have completed over 529 projects, and the water that we have conserved has crossed 1 billion liters, which is quite sizable. And events like these, we have addressed over 320 events where we are trying to sensitize people about water. And we were graced with the National Water Award very recently for that. Thank you everyone for your participation. Maybe you will have something to take away. It might not be a very easy solution to take up at home, but this definitely should spark a thought in you that how I can address water in my own way. Remember, you are a user. You have control in your hand. How you could do it, we pretty much have the frameworks. And on a closing note, it is our vision to make India water secure. I want to thank all of you for your patient efforts, and especially Nikmar, because this has given added a different dimension to our sensitization drive. This has reached over 500 people across the country, and not just within India, but to 7 different countries. So thank you. If you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, we are open to it. If you want to challenge any kind of frameworks, we are more than open. We have a solution mindset. We will readily build a better mindset to address the future water needs. Thank you.